Most lifters treat joint pain as a membership fee for getting stronger. Turns out that fee is optional, and nobody told the membership office. This video covers why joints actually become a problem for long-term lifters, and the specific evidence-backed ways to keep building muscle without turning your body into a percussion instrument. By the end, there will be a clear, practical plan for training hard without treating your joints like a renewable resource. So if it is not the cursed leg press machine everyone blames, what is actually going on here? Muscle and tendon are made of different tissue and they adapt to training at very different speeds. Muscle responds fairly quickly. Give it consistent hard training and its capacity can improve within weeks. Tendon is slower. Its remodeling and adaptation take considerably longer, so its ability to handle force can lag behind. That gap is the actual problem. As muscle strength climbs faster than tendon capacity, a real mismatch builds up between what the muscle can produce and what the connective tissue can safely absorb. This mismatch is a major part of why joint problems can build up in long-term lifters. In practice, this often shows up as a lifter who has been training hard and progressing well for a year or two, then suddenly develops nagging elbow or knee pain that seems to come out of nowhere. It is not out of nowhere. The muscle strength arrived on schedule. The tendon capacity is still catching up quietly in the background. Tendons do adapt to training, especially with higher strain protocols that load them directly and consistently over time. They just need a longer runway to catch up than muscle does, and that runway gets longer with age, since tendon turnover slows down further as the years go on. This is also part of why a program that worked fine in someone's 20s can start causing trouble in their 40s, even if nothing about the training itself has changed. The muscle side of the equation held steady. The tendon side quietly needs more time than it used to. Joint problems usually build up slowly from this mismatch, not from one bad rep or one bad exercise. Knowing that changes what actually needs to be met. So how does anyone train hard enough to build muscle without asking the tendons to keep up with something they are not ready for? The first method is blood flow restriction training, often shortened to BFR. It uses a light load, roughly 20 to 30% of a person's 1 rep max, combined with a band or cuff that partially restricts blood flow to the working muscle. That restriction changes the internal environment enough that the muscle responds as if it were lifting something much heavier. Metabolic byproducts build up faster than usual inside the muscle, which appears to be a major part of why such a light load can still trigger real growth. Research backs this up directly. BFR training produces muscle growth comparable to much heavier training while putting far less mechanical stress through the joint. That combination, real growth with light loads, is exactly what makes it useful for anyone dealing with a joint that cannot currently tolerate heavy weight. The clinical evidence is genuinely strong here too. In people with knee osteoarthritis, BFR training has produced meaningful improvements in both knee pain and quadriceps strength, in a population that often cannot safely load the knee heavily in the first place. After ACL reconstruction, it has produced strong muscle recovery outcomes in a population where joint stress is exactly the thing standing between them and getting back to normal life. These are not casual gym goers looking for a shortcut. These are clinical populations where joint protection is not optional, and the methods still delivered real muscle building results. But one caveat, BFR still lags slightly behind heavy training for pure strength gains, particularly maximal strength on big compound lifts. Think of it less as a total replacement for heavy lifting and more as a joint-friendly hypertrophy tool that happens to also be useful when heavy lifting is not an option. In practice, BFR tends to work best on single joint exercises for the arms and legs, where a cuff can be applied cleanly near the top of the limb. It is less commonly used on big compound lifts like squats and deadlifts, partly because the setup is more complicated and partly because those lifts already involve multiple joints working together, which makes isolating the restriction less straightforward. BFR lets a joint that is not ready for heavy load to still get a real muscle building stimulus. It is not a replacement for heavy lifting. It is what to do when heavy is not on the table. BFR handles load, but there is a second problem. Some lifts are only painful at one specific point in the range, and that point tends to be exactly where the weight feels heaviest. The second method is lengthened partial repetition. Instead of training through the full range of motion, the lift is trained only through the deep stretch portion of the movement. A 2024 body of research, including work by Jeff Nippard, Dr. Milo Wolf, and Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, found that lengthened partial repetitions produce similar muscle growth to full range of motion training in already trained lifters. That result on its own is useful, since it means nothing is being sacrificed by shortening the range. The joint-friendly angle is where it gets genuinely practical. Training through the stretch portion of a lift can reduce how often a joint has to move through its most stressful position, such as a full, heavily loaded lockout, while still delivering a strong growth stimulus. In practice, this might mean stopping a shoulder press a few inches short of a full lockout, where joint loading can become more demanding, or limiting a squat or leg extension to the bottom half of the range where the muscle is under the most stretch. The top of the range gets skipped while you continue training through the portion of the movement where the muscle is most lengthened and where recent research suggests a strong hypertrophy stimulus can be produced. For a lifter dealing with a cranky elbow on pressing movements or a knee that complains at full extension, this alone can be the difference between training around the joint and training in spite of it. Cutting short at the top does not mean cutting the results short. For many exercises, the stretch position is doing most of the work anyway. So if the stretch position is where most of the growth happens, bands are about to have an awkward moment. The third joint-friendly tool is resistance bands. Bands have an ascending resistance profile, meaning they are light at the start of a movement and heaviest near full contraction. That shape takes load off the joint at the point where a fixed heavy weight is often most mechanically demanding, since a barbell or dumbbell stays exactly as heavy at the joint's most vulnerable angle as it is everywhere else in the lift. Research backs this up too. Elastic resistance training produces strength and hypertrophy outcomes comparable to conventional training, which makes bands a legitimate tool rather than a compromise. But here is the honest tension, and it is a real one, not a manufactured debate for the sake of a plot twist. Bands are lightest exactly at the deep stretch position of a movement. That is the exact same position the lengthened partial research just covered points to as producing the strongest growth stimulus. Bands are joint-friendly specifically by underloading the exact spot that recent research says matters most, which means leaning on bands alone for an exercise built around a deep stretch can quietly cost some of the growth that exercise was supposed to deliver. The resolution is practical rather than dramatic. Research shows combining bands with free weights increases power and strength more than free weights alone. The sensible approach is using free weights or cables as the primary tool whenever stretch position loading is priority for a given exercise, and using bands specifically where joint-friendly lift matters more, or where smoothing out a rough sticking point in the lift is the goal. Layering both together, such as adding light band tension to a barbell squat or a bench press, often beats picking one exclusively. Bands are not the villain here. They are just the wrong tool for the one job that stretch position training is best at. Used alongside free weights rather than in place of them, they still earn their spot in the gym bag. The takeaway isn't that you need to stop lifting heavy. It's that you need to stop treating heavy loading as the only way to train hard. BFR, lengthened partials, and bands each have a place, and the trick is matching the tool to what your joint can actually tolerate. Your joints were never the problem. They were just waiting for your tendons to catch up, and apparently nobody told them there was a schedule. And if you want to know more about why the stretch position matters so much for muscle growth, that's covered in full in this video linked right here.